He never saw the way she looked at him when he wasn't watching. Tonight, he'd save her from a nightmare date. But would he finally see what was right in front of him all along? Asterisk. The restaurant buzzed with Friday night energy as Ellie Morgan sat across from her date, a man whose dating profile had promised charm and intelligence, but who had delivered neither. Instead, Martin had spent the last 40 minutes talking about his investment portfolio and occasionally glancing at the waitresses who passed by their table. So anyway, that's how I made my first million before 30, he said, swirling his wine glass with practiced precision. What about you? Your profile said you run some kind of office. I'm the CEO of Horizon Solutions, Ellie replied, fighting to keep the edge from her voice. At 36, she'd built her tech company from the ground up. But somehow, men like Martin always made her achievements sound like she managed a small dental practice. That's cute, Martin said with a patronizing smile. Must be nice having something to keep you busy. Ellie's phone vibrated against the table. A text from Jack, her executive assistant and the most reliable person in her life. Asterisk, how's the date going? Scale of 1 to 10 asterisk. She glanced up to make sure Martin was distracted by the wine list before typing back asterisk 50. Send help asterisk. Jack Reynolds sat at his kitchen table, his 7-year-old daughter Lily coloring beside him as he stared at Ellie's text. He'd known this date would be a disaster. Martin Chambers had a reputation around town, and not a good one. Jack had seen the way the man treated women at corporate events like trophies to be collected rather than people to be respected. Daddy, is something wrong? Lily asked, looking up from her drawing of what appeared to be a purple dinosaur wearing a tutu. No, sweetheart, just a friend who needs some help. Jack hesitated, then made a decision. How would you feel about going out for ice cream? Lily's eyes widened. On a school night. Special occasion, Jack said, already texting his neighbor Mrs. Patel to see if she could watch Lily for an hour. I need to help someone, and then we'll get that ice cream. Okay. 20 minutes later, Jack walked into Bella, the upscale Italian restaurant where Ellie was enduring her date. He spotted her immediately, her chestnut hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders, her posture rigid with discomfort. Something in his chest tightened at the sight of her forced smile. For 3 years, he'd worked as her executive assistant, raising Lily alone after his wife's death, while helping Ellie build her company into the success it had become. For 3 years, he'd ignored the way his heart raced when she laughed, the way he looked forward to Monday mornings just to see her again. She was his boss, his friend. Nothing more could ever happen between them. Martin was leaning across the table now, his hand inching toward Ellie's. Jack took a deep breath and approached. Ellie, thank goodness I found you, he said, his voice carrying just the right note of urgency. Ellie looked up, relief washing over her face. Jack, what are you doing here? It's Lily, he said, the lie coming easily for her sake. She's running a fever, and Mrs. Patel can't stay with her. I know it's your night off, but the Henderson proposal. Say no more, Ellie said, already gathering her purse. She turned to Martin with practiced regret. I'm so sorry, but this is an emergency. My assistant's daughter is sick, and we have a major client presentation on Monday. Martin's face darkened. You're leaving our date for work. For your assistance, kid. I am, Ellie said, standing tall despite being several inches shorter than both men. Thank you for dinner. Outside, the cool autumn air felt like freedom. Ellie burst into laughter as they rounded the corner. Jack Reynolds, you are a lifesaver. Was Lily really asking for me? Jack smiled, shoving his hands into his pockets. Lily's fine. She's with Mrs. Patel, waiting for me to bring her ice cream as payment for this rescue mission. Ellie stopped walking. You made up an emergency to save me from a bad date. You texted for help. Jack shrugged. I helped. My hero, she said. And though her tone was teasing, something in her eyes made Jack's heart skip. Let me come with you to get Lily's ice cream. It's the least I can do. An hour later, They sat on a bench outside the ice cream parlor, watching Lily chase fireflies in the small park across the street. The little girl's laughter floated back to them on the evening breeze. "She's growing up so fast," Ellie said softly. "You're doing an amazing job with her, Jack." "Some days I feel like I'm failing her completely," Jack admitted. Today, she asked why all the other kids have mommies who come to school events. Ellie's hand found his on the bench between them. "You're enough for her, Jack. More than enough." He looked down at their hands, her slender fingers resting on his. In the 3 years since Sarah had died, he'd never felt this kind of quiet comfort with anyone else. "What about you?" he asked, changing the subject before he could say something he'd regret. "Why do you keep going on these terrible dates?" Ellie withdrew her hand, and Jack immediately missed its warmth. "My mother keeps setting them up. She's convinced I'll die alone, surrounded by my company's annual reports." "That's ridiculous," Jack said. "You're the most incredible woman I know. Any man would be lucky to have you." The words hung between them, too honest for their carefully maintained professional relationship. Ellie looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Any man except the one I want," she said, so quietly he almost didn't hear it. Before Jack could ask what she meant, Lily came running back, her ice cream cone dripping down her hand. The moment passed, but something had shifted between them like the first tremor before an earthquake. Monday morning arrived with the usual chaos. Jack juggled getting Lily to school on time and preparing for the Henderson meeting. By the time he reached the office, Ellie was already in the conference room reviewing her presentation. "Morning," he said, setting a coffee on the table beside her. "Black with 1 sugar. You're a mind redditor," she smiled. But there was something guarded in her expression that hadn't been there before. "About Friday night?" "Don't mention it," Jack said quickly. "That's what friends are for." "Friends," Ellie repeated, the word falling flat between them. "Right." The Henderson meeting went brilliantly. Ellie was in her element, confident and charismatic as she outlined their proposal. Jack watched from the corner, taking notes and occasionally sliding her the information she needed before she even asked for it. They worked together like a well-oiled machine, anticipating each other's needs without words. Afterward, as the clients filed out with handshakes and promises of contracts to come, Jack caught Ellie looking at him with that same unreadable expression. "What?" he asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing," she said, gathering her papers. "I just realized something, that's all." Before he could press further, her phone rang. Her mother. According to the caller ID, Ellie sighed and answered, stepping out of the conference room. Jack tried not to eavesdrop, but he couldn't help overhearing fragments of the conversation. "No, Mom, the date was terrible. Yes, I left early. No, I don't want to meet your tennis instructor's son." When she returned, her face was tight with frustration. "My mother has set me up on another blind date. Apparently, Martin told everyone I abandoned him for work emergencies." "You could always say no," Jack suggested. "You don't know my mother," Ellie sighed. "It's easier to endure one bad date than listen to her lecture me about dying alone." Jack hesitated, then offered, "I could come rescue you again." The smile that bloomed across Ellie's face made his heart flip. "My hero," she said again. But this time, there was no teasing in her voice. The second rescue went as smoothly as the first. Jack arrived at the upscale sushi restaurant, where Ellie was trapped with her mother's tennis instructor's son, a man who had spent the entire appetizer course talking about his protein powder regimen. This time, the emergency was a fictional server outage at the office. Ellie apologized profusely to her date, who seemed more concerned about missing his evening workout than losing her company. That was even worse than Martin. Ellie laughed as they walked through the city park, taking the long way back to where Jack had parked. "How did you know exactly when to show up?" "I have a sixth sense for when you're in distress," Jack joked. But the truth was, he'd been sitting in his car outside the restaurant for 20 minutes, watching the clock and trying to determine the optimal rescue moment. "Where's Lily tonight?" Ellie asked. "Sleepover at her friend Emma's house. She's been looking forward to it all week." Ellie stopped walking. So you don't have to rush home. No, Jack said, suddenly aware of how alone they were in the moonlight park. Then let's get dinner, Ellie suggested. I'm starving. He talked so much I barely got 2 bites of edamame. They found a small diner a few blocks away, the kind of place with vinyl booze and waitresses who called everyone honey. Over burgers and milkshakes, they talked about everything except work, Lily's upcoming school play, the book Ellie was reading, Jack's dream of someday opening a small bookstore. I didn't know that about you, Ellie said, stealing one of his fries. That you wanted to own a bookstore. Jack shrugged. It was Sarah's dream originally. After college, before corporate life sucked us in, we used to talk about opening a place where people could find the perfect book and maybe a good cup of coffee. You should do it, Ellie said. Seriously. Life's too short not to follow your dreams, says the woman who built a tech empire before 40. That was my dream, Ellie pointed out. What's yours, Jack? Really yours? The question hung between them, weighted with meaning. Jack looked at her across the table, her eyes bright in the diner's fluorescent lighting, a smudge of ketchup at the corner of her mouth that he desperately wanted to wipe away. I want to be happy, he said finally. I want Lily to be happy. The rest is just details. Ellie nodded, understanding in her eyes. And are you happy? Most days, he answered honestly. Tonight, definitely. Something shifted in her expression then, a softening around the eyes that made his breath catch. But before either of them could speak, the waitress arrived with their check, breaking the moment. Outside the diner, standing beside his car, Jack found himself reluctant to end the evening. I should get you home, he said, though it was the last thing he wanted. Or we could take a walk, Ellie suggested. It's a beautiful night. They ended up at a small playground a few blocks from Ellie's apartment. Like teenagers with nowhere else to go, they sat on the swings, gently rocking back and forth under the stars. Thank you for rescuing me, Ellie said, after a comfortable silence. Again. Any time, Jack replied, meaning it more than she knew. Why do you do it? She asked suddenly. Drop everything to help me out of these situations. Jack stared at his shoes, digging into the wood chips beneath the swing. Because you'd do the same for me. Would I? Ellie's voice was soft, questioning. You already have, Jack said. After Sarah died, when I was drowning in grief and medical bills, you gave me flexible hours, brought dinner to our house, sat with Lily so I could shower and sleep. You saved us, Ellie. When he looked up, Ellie's eyes were shining with unshed tears. I did what anyone would do. No, Jack shook his head. You did what only you would do. That's why I come when you call. Every time, Ellie stood from her swing and moved to stand in front of him, in the moonlight with her hair falling around her face and her eyes bright with emotion. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Jack, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, I need to tell you something. His heart hammered against his ribs. What is it? But before she could answer, her phone rang, the special ringtone she'd set for her mother. The spell broken, Ellie stepped back and answered. Jack watched as her expression changed from frustration to resignation. When she hung up, she looked at him apologetically. My mother set me up on another date tomorrow night. Jack tried to ignore the disappointment that settled in his chest. Want me to rescue you again? Ellie hesitated, then nodded. Please. The third date was with a divorce attorney who spent the first 15 minutes explaining why prenuptial agreements were the cornerstone of modern romance. Jack arrived with news of an imaginary client crisis, and Ellie made her escape with practiced apologies. This time, they ended up at Jack's apartment where he cooked her the pasta his Italian grandmother had taught him to make before she died. They ate at his small kitchen table, talking and laughing as if they'd been doing this for years. You're full of surprises, Jack Reynolds, Ellie said, accepting a second glass of wine. Executive assistant, single father, chef extraordinaire. Man of mystery, that's me, he joked, though in truth he felt more seen by Ellie than by anyone else in his life. After dinner, they moved to the living room couch where Jack showed her Lily's latest art project, a family portrait that included Jack, Lily, their cat Muffin, and surprisingly Ellie. She put me in your family portrait, Ellie asked, her voice catching. She adores you, Jack said simply. You're the only woman in her life who's consistent. Her teachers change every year, but you've been there since she was 4. Ellie traced Lily's crayon drawing of herself with a gentle finger. I adore her too. Both of you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Jack looked at Ellie, at the way the soft lamplight caught in her hair, at the curve of her lips as she smiled down at his daughter's artwork. Ellie, he began, not sure what he was going to say, but knowing he needed to say something. Her phone rang again. Her mother, of course. Jack watched as Ellie answered, her expression cycling through the now familiar stages of resistance and resignation. When she hung up, she looked at him with apologetic eyes. Another date, Saturday night. Your mother is persistent, Jack said, trying to keep his tone light despite the heaviness in his chest. She means well, Ellie sighed. She just wants me to be happy. And these dates make you happy. No, Ellie admitted. But this, she gestured between them, these rescues, they do. Jack took a deep breath. Then I'll be there Saturday night. Just tell me when and where. Saturday arrived with unexpected complications, and Lily woke up with a real fever this time, her small body burning with infection. Jack spent the morning at the pediatrician's office, then the afternoon administering antibiotics and keeping cool compresses on his daughter's forehead. By 6:00, when he was supposed to be preparing for Ellie's rescue, Lily's fever had barely broken. There was no way he could leave her, even with Mrs. Patel. He texted Ellie with genuine regret. Asterisk can't make it tonight. Lily really is sick. I'm so sorry. Asterisk. Her response came quickly. Asterisk. Don't worry about me. Take care of your girl. Hope she feels better soon. Jack spent the evening reading to Lily until she fell into a fitful sleep, then sat beside her bed, checking her temperature every hour. Around 10 Siwa, his phone buzzed with another text from Ellie. Asterisk date was actually decent. Going for drinks now. Don't worry about us. Asterisk. Something cold settled in Jack's stomach. He stared at the message, reading it over and over. Don't worry about us. Us. As if she and her date were already a unit, a pair. An us. He told himself he should be happy for her. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? To find someone. Just because he'd allowed himself to imagine something between them didn't mean she felt the same way. Jack put his phone away in. He told himself he should be happy for her. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? To find someone. Just because he'd allowed himself to imagine something between them didn't mean she felt the same way. Jack put his phone away and focused on Lily, whose fever finally broke around midnight. He fell asleep in the chair beside her bed, his dreams troubled by images of Ellie laughing with a faceless man across a candlelit table. Monday morning arrived with a flurry of activity. Lily was well enough to return to school, though Jack arranged to pick her up early just in case. When he arrived at the office, Ellie's door was closed, unusual for her as she typically kept an open door policy. Morning, Megan, he greeted the receptionist. Is Ellie in meetings already? She's been in there since 7, Megan replied. Said she didn't want to be disturbed unless it was urgent. Jack nodded, settling at his desk with an uneasy feeling. He sent Ellie a quick email with her schedule for the day, then busied himself with work, trying not to think about her date from Saturday night. Around noon, Ellie's door finally opened. She emerged looking tired but composed, her professional mask firmly in place. Jack, she said, her voice carefully neutral. How's Lily feeling? Much better, thanks, he replied, searching her face for clues about her weekend. I'm sorry again about Saturday. I hope your date wasn't a total disaster without my rescue services. Something flickered across her expression. Disappointment. Hurt? It was gone before he could identify it. It was fine, she said. Actually, I'm seeing him again tonight. The words hit Jack like a physical blow. Oh, that's great. Yes, Ellie agreed, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. Apparently, my mother has good taste after all. What's he like? Jack asked, hating himself for needing to know. His name is Daniel. He's a pediatric surgeon. Very kind, very intelligent. She paused. My mother is thrilled. I'm happy for you, Jack said automatically, the lie bitter on his tongue. Ellie nodded, then retreated back into her office, closing the door behind her. The rest of the day passed in a fog. Jack went through the motions of his job, scheduling meetings and answering emails, all while trying to ignore the ache in his chest. At 5, he knocked on Ellie's door to say goodbye. I'm picking Lily up early today, he explained when she looked up from her computer. Just wanted to check if you needed anything before I go. I'm fine, Ellie said, her voice oddly formal. Have a good evening, Jack. He hesitated at the door. You too. Enjoy your date. Something in her expression softened. Jack? Yes. She seemed to reconsider whatever she was about to say. Nothing. Just give Lily a hug from me. I will, he promised, and left before he could say something he'd regret. The next few weeks fell into a new pattern. Ellie continued seeing Daniel, and Jack continued pretending he was fine with it. Their easy camaraderie at work had been replaced by a strained politeness that everyone in the office noticed, but no one mentioned. Lily asked about Ellie constantly. Why doesn't she come over anymore? Is she mad at us? She's just busy, Jack would explain, hating the disappointment in his daughter's eyes. She has a new friend she spends time with now. One rainy Tuesday, Jack was leaving the grocery store when he spotted them, Ellie and Daniel, sharing an umbrella as they walked toward a restaurant across the street. Daniel had his arm around her waist, and from a distance, they looked like the perfect couple. Jack ducked back into the store before they could see him, his groceries forgotten as he leaned against a display of cereal boxes, trying to breathe through the pain in his chest. Sir, are you okay? A concerned employee asked. Fine, Jack managed. Just remembered I forgot something. He abandoned his shopping cart and drove home in the rain, the windshield wipers keeping time with his racing thoughts. By the time he reached his apartment, he'd made a decision. The next morning, he placed a resignation letter on Ellie's desk before she arrived. When she walked in and saw the envelope with her name on it, her face palled. What's this? My 2 weeks' notice, Jack said quietly. I've been offered a position at Westfield Publishing, better hours for Lily, and a chance to be closer to the book world. Ellie stared at him, her professional mask slipping to reveal raw hurt. You're leaving just like that. It's a good opportunity, he said, avoiding her eyes. I've been thinking about it for a while. Were you going to discuss it with me at all? Ellie asked, her voice rising slightly. Or just drop this letter and walk away. I'm giving proper notice, Jack said, his own hurt making his tone sharper than intended. I'll train whoever you hire to replace me. Replace you? Ellie repeated, as if the words tasted wrong in her mouth. She picked up the letter but didn't open it. Can we discuss this in my office? Once the door closed behind them, Ellie's composure cracked. Why are you really leaving, Jack? He looked at her then, really looked at her for the first time in weeks. There were shadows under her eyes that her makeup couldn't quite hide, and a tension in her shoulders he hadn't noticed before. I think we both know why, he said softly. No, Ellie shook her head. I don't know. I thought we were friends at least, and now you're walking away without even talking to me first. Friends, Jack echoed the word hollow between them. Is that what we are, Ellie? What else would we be? She challenged. But there was something vulnerable in her question. Jack took a deep breath. I can't do this anymore. Watching you with him, pretending I'm happy for you when every time you mention his name, it feels like someone's twisting a knife in my chest. Ellie's eyes widened. Jack, I'm in love with you, he said, the words rushing out now that the dam had broken. I have been for years, and I thought maybe after those nights when I rescued you from those terrible dates that you might feel something too. But then Daniel came along, and you're happy, and I should be happy for you, but I can't. I can't work beside you every day knowing you're going home to him. Silence filled the office, broken only by the soft ticking of the clock on Ellie's desk. She stared at him, her expression unreadable. "Say something," Jack finally whispered. "Please, I broke up with Daniel last week," Ellie said quietly. Jack blinked, certain he'd misheard. "What? I ended things with Daniel," she repeated. "He's a wonderful man, but he's not." She took a shaky breath. "He's not you." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "I don't understand." Ellie moved closer, close enough that he could smell her perfume, vanilla, and something floral that had always made his heart race. "Those nights you rescued me," she said, her voice soft but steady. "They were the happiest I'd been in years. Not because you saved me from bad dates, but because I was with you. Just you, without titles or professional boundaries between us." "Then why, Daniel?" Jack asked, confusion clouding his relief. "Because I was scared," Ellie admitted. "When you couldn't make it that Saturday, I convinced myself I was being foolish. You were my employee, my friend. I thought I was reading too much into those evenings together, seeing what I wanted to see." "Oh, and what did you want to see?" Jack asked, hardly daring to hope. "This," Ellie said, and closed the distance between them. Her lips were soft against his, hesitant at first, then more certain as he responded. Jack's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer as years of longing poured into the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since the company Christmas party 3 years ago," he confessed. "You were wearing that red dress and you laughed at something I said, and I nearly kissed you right there under the mistletoe." "Why didn't you?" Ellie asked, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "You were my boss," Jack reminded her, "and I was still grieving Sarah. It wasn't the right time." And now Ellie's eyes searched his. "Now I'm still planning to resign," Jack said firmly. "I can't be your employee and your—" He hesitated, unsure what to call himself. "Boyfriend," Ellie suggested with a small smile. "Partner. The man I'm in love with." Jack's heart soared at her words. "All of the above," he said, kissing her again because he could, because the impossible had somehow become possible. "What about Lily?" Ellie asked when they separated. "How will she feel about this?" Jack laughed, the sound full of joy and relief. "She's been asking when you're going to become her mom since that night we had ice cream. I think she'll approve." Tears shimmered in Ellie's eyes. "I've missed her. Missed both of you these past weeks." "We've missed you too," Jack said, wiping away a tear that escaped down her cheek. "Come over for dinner tonight. Lily's making her famous spaghetti with dinosaur-shaped meatballs." "I wouldn't miss it for the world," Ellie promised. 6 months later, Jack stood in the small bookstore that had once been just a dream. Shelves lined the walls filled with carefully curated titles. A coffee counter occupied one corner where a barista prepared drinks for customers browsing the new releases. "What do you think?" Ellie asked, slipping her hand into his as they surveyed the space. "Will Reynolds and Morgan Books be a success with you as my business partner?" "Absolutely," Jack said, squeezing her hand. The diamond ring on her finger caught the light, still new enough that he found himself staring at it in wonder. Lily bounded up to them, her arms full of children's books. "Dad, Ellie, I've arranged the kids section just like we talked about. All the dragon books are together, and I put the space books on the top shelf because space is up." "Perfect," Ellie said, kneeling to examine Lily's work. "You're the best junior bookstore manager ever." Lily beamed at the praise, then lowered her voice to a stage whisper. "Dad, did you ask her yet?" Jack shook his head, giving his daughter a mock stern look. "I was waiting for the right moment, Lilybug. Ask me what?" Ellie looked between them, curiosity brightening her eyes. Jack exchanged a glance with Lily, who nodded encouragingly. We were wondering if you'd like to move in with us. The apartment above the bookstore is plenty big enough for 3, and it would save you the commute from your place." And yes, Ellie interrupted, her smile radiant. Yes to moving in. Yes to building this life with you both. Lily cheered and threw her arms around them, creating a group hug in the middle of the bookstore. Jack held his family close, marveling at how his life had transformed in just 6 months. "I still can't believe it sometimes," he murmured against Ellie's hair. "That night I rescued you from that terrible date. I never imagined we'd end up here." "I did," Ellie confessed. "Well, I hoped. I'd been in love with you for so long, watching you with Lily, seeing how kind and dedicated you were. Every time you came to my rescue, I fell a little deeper." "And I never noticed," Jack said, shaking his head at his own blindness. "You noticed what mattered," Ellie assured him. "You saw me, really saw me when no one else did." As customers began to arrive for the bookstore's grand opening, Jack watched Ellie move through the space, greeting people with her natural warmth and charm. Lily stayed close to her side, proudly showing off her reading corner to anyone who would look. His boss, his friend, his fiancée, the woman who had become a mother to his daughter and a partner in his dreams. Jack had spent years rescuing Ellie from bad dates, never realizing she'd been rescuing him all along, from loneliness, from fear, from a life half-lived. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with a rescue, even when the hero doesn't realize he's being saved right back. Isk, if you enjoyed this heartwarming story about finding love in unexpected places, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more content that will touch your heart and remind you that sometimes the love you're looking for has been right in front of you all along. Share in the comments if you've ever had a moment where you suddenly realized someone special was already in your life.